The Yakut tundra at -71 doesn't whisper, it cuts. Wind slides across the snow like thin steel, and two figures push through it, one old, one young. Their breath freezes the moment it leaves their lips. Ahead of them sits a tiny wooden hut, no bigger than a packing crate. Yet it's the only place they can survive the night. It shouldn't work. It's too small, too thin, too fragile. No insulation, no furnace, no stash of firewood waiting outside. Just raw cold strong enough to make steel brittle in minutes. But they duck inside anyway, because somehow that little box holds a secret. And the question hangs in the dark. How do two generations stay warm when the cold is trying to crush the air out of their lungs? The tiny hut closed around them the moment they ducked inside a wooden shell, no wider than a man's shoulders. Frost clung to the walls like white sandpaper. The young hunter shivered, trying to hide the shake in his hands. The elder didn't move. He'd sat in cold like this his whole life, and the hut felt familiar to him, the way an old saddle feels to a seasoned rider. But the young one made a mistake. He breathed too hard. Each breath pushed warm air away from his chest and into the cracks of the hut. The elder glanced over steady and calm. In a night like this, losing heat is the same as losing chances. And losing breath, that's losing your life. So the elder shifted. He curled himself tight, knees up, arms drawn in. The young hunter watched closely. That was the moment he understood a small space isn't a weakness out here. It's a weapon. The smaller the space, the tighter the heat. Pressure builds. Warmth stacks. That little hut becomes a furnace made from two bodies and a few inches of trapped air. The elder leaned his shoulder into the boys. A simple signal. Sit close. Head down. Seal the space. The young hunter followed, copying every move. Their shoulders touched. Their breath settled. The air inside thickened with warmth, soft and slow. Old Coleman notes from the 1800s describe this exact posture, a survival stance passed down through generations of men who knew the cold better than they knew comfort. And the payoff came fast. Heat rose. Heat held. Heat cost nothing. In the modern world, a thermostat takes half an hour just to push the chill out of a living room. These two didn't have buttons or plastic vents. All they had was their breath. And a hut no bigger than their bodies. And the lesson sits heavy in the dark. Sometimes the smallest thing you build is the only thing that keeps you alive. The warmth inside the tiny hut didn't last long. The young hunter felt the cold crawling up his back, a steady bite working its way toward his spine. He shifted, trying to stretch out like he would at home, and instantly lost what little heat he had gathered. The elder watched him struggle. He'd seen that mistake 100 times in younger men. Out here, the wrong posture bleeds heat faster than the wind itself. The elder moved first. Slow. Deliberate. He pulled his knees up, folding his body inward. His chest met his thighs, arms wrapped across his ribs. A shape like a triangle, tight, compact, shielding the three places that mattered most: chest, belly, and thighs. The young hunter noticed the change. It wasn't a pose for comfort. It was a pose for survival. He tried to mimic it, but fumbled, his back still exposed. The elder reached over and tugged the fur cloak across the young man's spine, creating a soft arch of warmth over both of them. The air shifted immediately. Heat didn't escape upward anymore. It settled around their bodies, captured in the triangle they had formed. Old Yakut hunting notes describe this exact stance, a thermal knot used when the cold turned cruel. The effect was fast. Heat climbed back in. Heat stayed put. And the body didn't waste energy fighting the chill. The young hunter felt it first in his chest, an easing, a calm returning. He realized the old man hadn't said a word. He didn't need to. Wisdom like this doesn't come from talking. It comes from nights survived. Modern folks stretch out under big comforters and still shiver when the thermostat dips. These two men had nothing but fur breath and a posture older than any heater. And in that cramped wooden box, the lesson took root: protect the center of the body, and the cold loses half its power. The floor of the hut was nothing but frozen earth, hard enough to bruise a knee. The young hunter stared confused as the elder reached down with stiff fingers and began scraping a shallow bowl into the ground. Just a few inches deep, nothing fancy, nothing that looked like it could save a man in this kind of cold. The young one finally whispered the question in his mind. Why dig now when the night is already biting through their clothes? The elder didn't answer. He pressed his palm into the hollow, feeling how the land blocked the draft curling under the door. Then he laid a thin layer of dry grass inside the kind Yakut hunters carried, tucked beneath their belts. The young man realized the trick. The earth cuts the wind. The grass holds the heat. Together they make a pocket of warmth low to the ground, a microclimate born from soil and instinct. He followed the elder's motion, pushing his own hands into the frost, shaping his own bowl beside him. Inch by inch, they lowered themselves into those shallow hollows, curling their bodies into the space. The moment their hips settled, he felt it. The wind stopped stealing heat. The cold stopped climbing up his back. What little warmth he had stayed, and the payoff was steady. Warmth stabilized. Warmth felt safe. Warmth didn't cost them a single ounce of fuel. Old field notes from northern Yakutia mention this same trick sleeping in the land. Not on it, a method used by hunters who understood that Earth isn't an enemy in winter. It's a shield if you know how to work with it. The young hunter breathed easier. The elder finally spoke, voice low, almost swallowed by the dark. The ground keeps its promises, he said. And in that cramped hut, with nothing but dirt beneath them, the boy understood the lesson. When you know how to use the earth, it becomes your ally. Inside the tiny hut, the cold began creeping back in. Not fast, but steady, like a slow hand pressing against their ribs. The young hunter felt panic rise in his chest. His breathing turned sharp, too loud for such a small space. Each burst of air scattered the warmth they had just earned. The elder watched him not with judgment, but with the calm of a man who had seen this fear many winters ago. Then, without a word, the elder lifted the heavy fur cloak that lay across his shoulders. He draped it over both their heads, letting it fall around them like a tent inside the hut. A dome of fur, a dome of breath. The young hunter froze for a moment, surprised by the sudden darkness and the soft brush of fur against his cheeks. In that little cave of warmth, something changed. Their breaths no longer floated away into the cold. They pooled between them, warm, damp, alive. The young hunter could hear his own breath mixing with the elder's, forming a thin layer of heat that clung to their faces and chests. It wasn't much, but in a night like this, not much is everything. Old Yakut notes talk about this trick-sharing breath to survive the hours when firewood runs out and frost tries to slip into the lungs. The young hunter felt it now, spreading slowly like steam rising off a mug in the dead of winter, and the payoff was instant. Warmth thickened. Warmth stayed. Warmth didn't cost a thing. The elder finally spoke, voice low and steady inside the fur dome. "Breathe slow," he said. "Your breath is the last fire you carry." In that cramped hut, with the storm howling outside and 2 generations pressed close beneath a single cloak, the young man understood the truth in the coldest nights on earth. Breath is the final flame. The storm outside didn't just roar, it searched. Thin fingers of wind probed every crack in the tiny hut, sliding in low along the floor, then curling up their backs like cold smoke. The young hunter flinched every time a hidden draft found a gap in his clothing. It felt like the night had teeth. He pulled his fur tighter, but it wasn't enough. No matter how he hunched his shoulders, the cold kept slipping through the seams of the walls. The elder could feel it too, those narrow, slicing currents of air that steal heat faster than open wind ever could. Any fool can fear the blizzard outside. The Yakut feared the draft inside. Quietly, the elder reached for a smaller piece of fur lying near the wall. Then another, and another. With slow, practiced hands, he began stuffing them into the spaces where the light leaked through between warped planks under the crooked door, along the corners where wood no longer met clean. The young hunter watched, then joined in pressing strips of fur and handfuls of dry grass into every line that breathed cold. Old Yakut field notes describe the same ritual in Kolama huts, sealing the hut like a living animal wrapping its weak spots in skin, not to make it pretty, to make it hold heat. And the change came quietly. The drafts vanished, the air stilled, the warmth stopped running away. The young hunter felt it first as a kind of silence. No more invisible claws scraping along his back. Just the steady, heavy warmth of shared bodies and trapped air. Outside, the storm could scream all it wanted. Inside, the hut had finally learned to keep its heat. In the modern world, we spray foam into our walls and tape up our windows, then still complain about the heating bill. These men had nothing but fur grass and patience. In that little wooden box, the boy learned a simple truth. Sometimes the real enemy isn't the cold itself. It's the tiny places you let it in. Inside the cramped hut, the cold settled into their clothes like a second skin. The young hunter began to fidget, pulling at his collar and shifting his shoulders. Sweat had gathered at the base of his neck, trapped beneath the wrong layer of fur. In weather like this, sweat is a silent killer. Moisture freezes. Freezing steals heat. The elder noticed the shine on the boy's neck, the slight tremor that wasn't from fear, but from wet fabric against cold air. He reached out, gave a small tap to the boy's chest, and spoke the words every Yakut hunter grows up hearing, "Stay dry," or "You don't stay." The young man looked down, realizing the mistake he'd layered himself wrong. The warmest fur sat too close to his skin, trapping moisture instead of letting it escape. The elder motioned for him to undo his clothing. Inch by inch, they peeled back the layers, damp inner fur, then a heavy middle piece, then the wind-cutting outer hide. The elder laid them out, reordering them with deliberate precision. Layer 1, a thin, breathable fur to pull sweat away. Layer 2, the thick Yakut hide designed to hold body heat. Layer 3, the windproof outer shell that turned gales into whispers. Then they dressed again, slowly, carefully, the way generations before them had done in huts just like this. And the payoff was immediate. Dry returned first. Warmth followed. Safety settled in. The young hunter let out a slow breath, feeling the cold release its grip on his spine. The elder gave a small nod approval, but also lesson delivered. In the modern world, people stack jackets on jackets, thinking more fabric means more heat. But the Yakut knew better. Order beats excess. Sequence beats thickness. In that tiny hut carved out of winter, the boy understood the truth. Sometimes survival isn't about how much you wear, but whether you wear it in the right order. The young hunter's strength was fading. You could see it in the way his shoulders sank, in the way his breath thinned out like smoke in the wind. The elder didn't scold him. He'd seen this moment in many winters when the cold stops biting the skin and starts biting the spirit. With a slow, practiced motion, the elder pulled the largest fur in the hut over both their backs. Thick, heavy, wide enough to cover 2 generations at once. Then he shifted closer until their spines touched. A firm line of contact. Not sentimental, just necessary. At first, the young hunter stiffened, but then he felt it, the steady warmth pulsing through the elder's back. A rhythm, a calm heartbeat, answering the panic in his own. Their breaths aligned. Their body heat circled between them in a quiet loop, never escaping, never wasted. 2 men, 1 shared furnace, and the payoff arrived gently. Warmth steadied, warmth protected, warmth carried them toward sleep. The young hunter let his weight sink into the fur, finally breathing easy. Out here, at minus 71 degrees, Celsius survival isn't always about skill, or strength, or even age. Sometimes life comes from the person sitting right beside you. Morning rose slow over Yakutia, painting the snow in a cold blue glow. The tiny hut creaked as the 2 hunters stepped out, one young, one old, steam drifting from their collars like the last trace of the night's struggle. Yet their warmth stayed with them, tucked inside their layers, held close by the lessons shared in the dark. The difference between them wasn't strength, or age, or luck. It was the quiet wisdom passed from a man who had survived 100 nights like this to one who had only just begun to understand the cold. And in that pale sunrise, a truth settled over the tundra. Sometimes the way you survive today rests in the hands of the one who survived yesterday.